I'm now 66 years old, and I've carried an impossible secret for 4 decades. Behind my property, concealed from everyone, there's been a being that authorities have hunted since before my birth. I call him Samuel. He's a Bigfoot. I discovered him back when I was 26 in 1984, injured and near death in the forest surrounding my land. That day, I made a choice that transformed everything for both of us. This is my story of becoming the keeper of something beyond belief, and why I've finally decided the truth needs to come out. It was August 1984 in Oregon's Cascade Mountains, where I'd settled at 18 after inheriting my uncle's estate. 40 acres of wilderness with a modest home and barn, isolated enough that neighbors were miles apart. Perfect for Henry Walsh, a solitary carpenter who valued peace over people. I survived doing honest work in nearby sisters, building decks, crafting cabinets, repairing structures. My life was simple: books, my workshop, and forest silence. Everything changed on August 14th while I worked in my shop. An otherworldly sound pierced through the trees, a vocalization that defied classification, neither fully human nor purely animal. Grabbing my rifle, bear country demanded caution. I tracked the noise through a quarter-mile of dense forest until I found something that shattered my understanding of reality. What I initially mistook for a trapped bear revealed itself as something else entirely as I approached. A massive figure, approximately 7.5 feet tall, lay bleeding beside a fallen tree. Dark brown fur, matted with blood, covered impossibly long arms and broad shoulders. The face stopped me cold, eerily human yet distinctly different, with a prominent brow, wide nose, and eyes radiating both agony and unmistakable intelligence. A living, breathing Bigfoot, wounded and dying on my property. Terror told me to flee. Every wilderness legend, every cautionary tale flooded my mind. But when our eyes met, I recognized something profound in that gaze. Not mere animal instinct, but comprehension, awareness, terror. This creature feared me. I slowly lowered my weapon. "Easy now," I whispered, uncertain if understanding was possible. "I mean no harm." Moving cautiously closer, I discovered the injury, a mangled left leg trapped in an ancient illegal bear trap. Deep infection had set in around the embedded metal teeth. The creature's soft vocalization wasn't aggression, it was a plea. I'd treated injured wildlife before, deer, coyotes, even a bear cub. This was different. This was encountering the impossible. Discovery would mean invasion. Scientists, federal agents, hunters descending on my land. But watching this being suffer, I couldn't abandon it. "All right," I said, more to steel myself. "Let's help you." I rushed home for tools, medical supplies, and whiskey, my only available anesthetic. Returning, I found the creature watching my approach with exhausted eyes. "This will hurt," I warned, pouring whiskey, "over my hands and the trap mechanism. But without removing this, infection will kill you." I worked to pry open the trap while the creature tensed, vocalizing pain but never attacking. It understood my intentions. Nearly an hour passed before I freed the leg, severely lacerated, possibly fractured, infection spreading rapidly. I cleaned the wounds with whatever I had, causing a roar that surely terrified every nearby animal, then wrapped everything with fresh bandages. "You can't remain here," I said, exhausted. "You need shelter, nourishment, safety to heal. Can you move?" When it tried standing, immediate collapse followed. The leg couldn't bear weight. Surveying the forest, then this helpless creature, I realized abandonment meant death, from predators, infection, or worse, human discovery. A decision formed that would define my next 40 years. "My barn," I declared. "It's close. I'll help you there, but you must trust me." 3 agonizing hours followed as I helped the creature reach my property through encouragement and physical support. The final 100 yards required practically carrying it. By the time we reached the barn, complete exhaustion had claimed us both. The structure was solid, though aged, with a loft and empty stalls. I cleared the largest space, piled hay for bedding, and settled the creature inside. "Stay hidden," I instructed. "I'll bring provisions. Nobody can discover your presence. Understand?" Those intelligent eyes met mine before it produced a soft sound. Then, impossibly, it nodded. A clear, deliberate gesture of comprehension. "Dear God," I breathed, "you actually understand." Days and nights blurred together as I tended this being. Water was gratefully consumed, food proved trickier, rejected bread, accepted meat from my freezer. I regularly changed bandages, applied antiseptic, monitored for fever and worsening infection. I couldn't keep thinking of it. This creature, watching me work with apparent curiosity, reaching out to gently touch my camping lantern, fascinated by the light, deserved more. "You've never experienced modern things, have you?" I mused. "Living wild all your life, avoiding people, staying invisible." A sound that resembled agreement followed. Days passed, and something extraordinary developed. We began communicating, not through words — the creature's anatomy couldn't produce human speech — but through gestures, sounds, expressions. Head nods meant yes, shakes meant no. Pointing indicated needs or wants. Different vocalizations emerged that I learned to interpret: pain, hunger, gratitude. Within a week, infection receded and healing began. The leg could bear slight weight, though full recovery would take weeks. By then, another decision had formed. Even healed, releasing it back to the wilderness wasn't possible. Not yet. Perhaps never. Because 4 days after discovery, on August 18th, federal agents appeared at my neighbor's property 3 miles distant, inquiring about unusual sightings, large tracks, strange forest sounds. Someone had reported something. The government was investigating. I'd heard whispered stories, government agents hunting Bigfoot, rumors of creatures captured and taken to secret facilities. Whether true or not, I couldn't risk finding out. So the creature remained. As days stretched into weeks and weeks into months, something unexpected happened. We became friends. I named him Samuel after my late uncle who'd left me this property. Samuel seemed to accept it, responding whenever I spoke his name. Gender was confirmed during treatment: male, probably mid-20s based on my estimates. Samuel possessed remarkable intelligence. Within a month, dozens of communicative gestures developed. He understood necessary concealment, never making loud sounds during daylight when discovery risked exposure. He learned my daily patterns, waiting patiently for provisions. But loneliness showed, in his eyes, in soft nighttime sounds when he thought I wasn't listening. He missed his kind, the forest, freedom. "I'm sorry," I told him one autumn evening. "This isn't fair, but discovery means capture, imprisonment, experimentation, perhaps worse. Here, at least, you're safe." Samuel's sad, intelligent eyes met mine. Then his massive hand rested gently on my shoulder, a gesture acknowledging understanding and expressing gratitude for my protection. That was September 1984. Reagan led the nation, MTV revolutionized music, and the world remained oblivious that in a small Oregon barn, a man and Bigfoot were forging an improbable friendship destined to last decades. By October, Samuel's leg had healed enough for walking, though a permanent limp remained. He could have left. The barn door stayed unlocked, but he remained. Perhaps safety mattered most. Perhaps he'd been lonely, too, finding companionship. Perhaps he understood what I offered, protection from a world that would never accept his existence. Whatever the reason, Samuel stayed, and I kept his secret day after day, month after month, year after year. Living with Samuel demanded completely restructuring my existence. The barn transformed into his permanent residence, and I invested months making it livable. Insulating walls for winter protection, installing a wood stove for warmth, and designing space allowing free movement while maintaining exterior invisibility. Food presented the biggest challenge. Samuel's size, roughly 600 pounds, required substantial nutrition. His diet was omnivorous: meat, fish, berries, roots, nuts. Purchasing provisions for two without arousing suspicion proved impossible. Creativity became essential. I increased hunting activity, claiming I sold venison to justify ammunition purchases. A massive vegetable garden appeared, explained as a newfound hobby. Grocery shopping occurred across different towns, preventing any single store from noticing my excessive buying patterns. Every excursion demanded careful planning to avoid attention. Samuel adapted remarkably to this new existence. His naturally nocturnal nature helped considerably. Daytime brought sleep while I worked. Nighttime brought activity when discovery risks vanished. Our evenings together developed into something almost domestic. Human objects fascinated him endlessly. Books captivated him. Though reading was impossible, he'd study pictures for hours. An old radio became a treasure. Classical music particularly soothed him. When MTV emerged, I introduced a small TV with VCR, and Samuel watched spellbound by moving images. "You're probably the world's only Bigfoot who's seen Michael Jackson's Thriller," I remarked one 1985 night, watching his wonder-filled eyes. He produced a sound I'd learned meant amusement, laughter, if he could manage it. Yet close calls occurred, especially those early years. March 1985 brought severe storm damage to my barn roof. Hiring contractors meant Samuel hiding in the loft under blankets and tarps for 3 days while workers occupied the property. I remained with him constantly, terrified someone might hear breathing or movement. "Just a bit longer," I whispered as hammers pounded overhead. "Stay quiet. Stay still." Samuel's extraordinary self-control kept him motionless for hours. When workers finally departed and coverings were removed, he was stiff and uncomfortable, but had betrayed no presence. July 1986 brought a forest fire within 2 miles of my property. Evacuation orders issued. Police went door to door ensuring compliance. I claimed evacuation, then secretly returned to stay with Samuel. "I won't abandon you," I said as smoke filled the air and ash fell like snow. "If this burns, we face it together." Samuel looked at me with what I can only describe as gratitude mixed with concern. He placed his hand over his heart, pointed at me, then toward the forest, telling me to save myself, that staying wasn't necessary. "Yes, it is," I replied. "You're my responsibility now, my friend. Friends don't abandon each other." The fire shifted direction that night, sparing my property by less than a mile. When evacuation lifted and others returned, I claimed I'd stayed with Bend friends. Nobody questioned it. Years passed, and Samuel and I established our rhythm. I learned more about him than any human had likely learned about his species. Incredible strength. I witnessed him lift a 300-pound wooden beam single-handed. Agility, despite size, climbing to the barn's top in seconds using support beams. Superior senses, hearing my truck from a mile away, smelling approaching visitors long before I could see them. Perfect night vision, navigating complete barn darkness effortlessly, most impressively, emotional complexity. He experienced joy, sadness, loneliness, fear, affection. A sense of humor emerged, sometimes hiding my tools as pranks, making that amused sound when I couldn't locate them. Playfulness, gentleness, thoughtfulness defined him. In 1987, I undertook major property modifications. Townspeople heard I was building a large storage shed, but actually I created a tunnel system connecting the barn to a fenced forest section where Samuel could safely venture outside at night. 20 feet of underground tunnel reinforced with timber and concrete, opening into a quarter-acre enclosure surrounded by 12-foot fencing camouflaged as natural forest. 6 months of nightly labor, but when finished, Samuel had access to open air and real trees for the first time in 3 years. His first night outside, he stood beneath stars for an hour, simply gazing skyward. I watched from the tunnel entrance, seeing tears in his eyes. "I know it's not true freedom," I said quietly, "but it's something." He made a soft sound and placed his hand over his heart. "Thank you." By 1989, we'd developed even more sophisticated communication. Flashcards with simple pictures and words taught him to associate images with meanings. He learned to point at cards for expressing complex ideas. Numbers, time comprehension through clock faces explaining my return, even basic concepts like weekdays. "You're smarter than most people I know," I told him one evening as he correctly identified card sequences. "If the world knew your true nature, your capabilities—" But that was precisely why the world couldn't know. Close calls persisted through the years. 1991 brought a lost hiker wandering onto my property. I found him near the barn, exhausted and dehydrated. I provided water and trail directions while Samuel remained absolutely silent inside, just 20 feet from the stranger. 1993 saw rising area property values and developers buying land. A real estate agent visited asking about selling interest. She toured the property, approaching uncomfortably close to the barn. "Nice barn," she observed. "Good structure. A buyer could convert it into a guest house or studio." "Not for sale," I stated firmly. "This property stays in the family." "Everything has its price, Mr. Walsh." "Not this, not ever." She departed, disappointed, but returned twice more with increasingly generous offers. Each time I refused. Samuel mattered more than any sum. As the 1990s progressed, future concerns emerged. Late 30s, healthy and strong, but not forever. What happened to Samuel when I aged? When I died? He'd lived in that barn nearly a decade. Survival skills for the wild had atrophied. He depended on me completely. I started setting aside money, making plans. Surrounding properties were purchased as they became available. Another 40 acres in 1994, 60 more in 1996. By 1998, I owned 140 acres of forest, creating a larger buffer between Samuel and the outside world. I also documented everything in journals: Samuel's care, dietary needs, health issues, arthritis developed in that trapped leg, preferences, routines. If something happened to me, whoever found these journals would at least know how to care for him. Samuel seemed to sense my concerns. One 1999 evening, 15 years after our meeting, he did something remarkable. Using picture cards, he created a sequence. A picture of me, him, a house, and a heart. "You and me. Home, love," I interpreted. "This is our home. We're family." He nodded emphatically, then pointed at me with his recognized gesture, hand over heart, extended toward me. His way of expressing gratitude and care. "Yeah, buddy," I said, voice thick with emotion. "We're family. You're stuck with me for the long haul." As 2000 approached with Y2K worries consuming the world, I worried about different things. Samuel was middle-aged now, probably around 40 by my estimates. I was 42. We'd spent nearly half our lives together, hidden from the world, creating our own small universe in that barn and surrounding forest. I'd sacrificed normal life for this. No wife, no children, no close friendships. Maintaining Samuel's secret meant keeping everyone at arm's length. My existence revolved around protecting him, providing for him, keeping him safe and hidden. But watching him that New Year's Eve, sitting peacefully in the barn, listening to classical music as the year 2000 arrived, I knew my choice was right. The world might see a monster or curiosity, but I saw truth. A person, different certainly, but a thinking, feeling person deserving dignity, safety, and kindness. And I'd continue protecting him regardless of cost for as long as I lived. The 2000s introduced challenges I hadn't anticipated. Technology advanced rapidly, bringing new threats to Samuel's secrecy. Satellite imagery became increasingly detailed and accessible. Google Earth's 2005 launch suddenly enabled anyone with internet to view aerial property photographs, including mine. Paranoia consumed me regarding aerial visibility. Additional roof structures appeared over the outdoor enclosure, mimicking natural tree canopy. Fast-growing trees were strategically planted, blocking sightlines. I even researched thermal imaging technology, worried someone might detect Samuel's heat signature. "The world's shrinking," I told Samuel one 2006 evening. "Secrets are harder to keep. Everyone carries cameras now, has internet, GPS. We must be more careful than ever." Samuel, now in his 60s by my estimation, nodded slowly. He understood. Gray hair had started appearing around his face and shoulders. Movements were stiffer than 20 years prior. Arthritis in his leg troubled him more, especially during cold weather. I was 48 then, feeling my own age. Years of carpentry work had damaged my back and knees. Worries emerged about when I could no longer physically care for Samuel, when ladder climbing for barn repairs became too risky, when carrying heavy food loads became impossible. In 2007, I made a frightening but necessary decision. I needed help, but not from strangers. I contacted my nephew, David Walsh, 23 and working as a Washington Park ranger. David had always been a good kid, responsible, trustworthy, someone who respected nature and privacy. More importantly, he was family. If anyone could keep this secret, it was him. I invited him to visit for a week that August. On his third day, after we'd reconnected and I'd reevaluated his character, I took the risk. "David, I need to show you something," I said. "What you're about to see, you can never tell anyone. Not your parents, not your girlfriend, not your ranger colleagues. If you can't absolutely promise that, we stop right here." David looked concerned but intrigued. "Uncle Henry, are you in trouble? Is this illegal?" "Not illegal, exactly, but if anyone discovered it, they'd take away something. Someone very important to me." I led him to the barn. Samuel was in the outdoor enclosure, accessible through the tunnel. I'd told Samuel that morning someone I trusted was coming and he needed to remain calm and unafraid. When David saw Samuel standing beneath the trees, he literally fell backwards, scrambling away in shock. "What the hell? That's a Bigfoot." "His name is Samuel," I said calmly, "and he's lived here since 1984. 23 years, David. I found him dying in a trap, and I've protected him ever since." David couldn't form words. He just stared, mouth agape, as Samuel watched with cautious eyes. "He's intelligent, David, as smart as you or me. Maybe smarter in certain ways. He understands English, communicates through gestures and pictures. He's gentle, kind, and he's my best friend. He's also terrified right now because there's a stranger here, so I need you to calm down." An hour passed before David processed what he was seeing. He asked hundreds of questions, which I patiently answered. Finally, he looked at me with something resembling awe. "Uncle Henry, do you understand what this means? This is the most important zoological discovery in history. Scientists would lock him up, study him like a lab specimen, make him famous, strip away every bit of dignity and freedom he has left," I interrupted. "I know what scientists would do, David. That's why nobody can ever know. Samuel is a person, not a specimen. He has rights, even if the law doesn't recognize them. He has feelings, preferences, fears. He deserves to live in peace, not in a zoo or research facility." David spent the remaining week getting to know Samuel. By the end, he understood my secret-keeping. He promised to help, to be there if something happened to me, to assume Samuel's care if necessary. "Thank you," I told him as he departed. "You've just made yourself responsible for the world's biggest secret." "I won't let you down, Uncle Henry. Or Samuel." Having David know brought both relief and new anxiety, but as years passed and he kept his word, never telling anyone, visiting regularly to help with heavier work, I knew my choice was right. In 2008 I turned 50, and Samuel was probably around 65. We were both slowing down, but our routines remained stable. Samuel had his nightly outdoor time, meals, music, and television. I'd upgraded to a DVD player, and Samuel had developed favorite movies. He particularly loved nature documentaries. I think he missed the wild world he'd once known. But that year brought unexpected crisis. In October 2008, during a routine visit, David noticed Samuel moving strangely. "Uncle Henry, something's wrong. Look at his breathing." Samuel was wheezing, struggling for air. His color was off. He seemed disoriented. I'd seen him sick before. Colds, minor infections. This was different. "I think it's his heart," I said, panic rising. "Or pneumonia, maybe. David, what do I do? I can't take him to a vet. I can't take him to a doctor." "Do you have a stethoscope? First aid training?" "Basic stuff, but nothing for something serious." David made a decision. "I know someone, a veterinarian friend who works with large animals. She's discreet, doesn't ask questions. Let me call her." "David, no. Uncle Henry, if we don't do something, Samuel could die. Trust me on this." Dr. Lisa Chen arrived the next morning, believing she was treating a large exotic animal that a ranger friend's uncle kept illegally. David had been deliberately vague. When she saw Samuel, she went silent for a full minute. "That's not possible," she finally whispered. "It's possible, and it's real. And he's dying," I said. "Can you help him?" Lisa, to her credit, pulled herself together quickly. She examined Samuel, who was too sick to be frightened of yet another stranger. Her diagnosis was pneumonia, severe but treatable if we acted quickly. "He needs antibiotics, respiratory support, and monitoring. I can do this." She looked at me and David. "This is real. You're hiding a living Bigfoot. For 24 years. "Yes," I said, "and if you tell anyone, they'll take him away from me. Please." Lisa thought for a long moment. Then she nodded. "I'll help, but you two owe me every detail about how this happened." She treated Samuel for 2 weeks, visiting daily, bringing medications and equipment. Samuel's fever broke on day 5. By day 10, he was breathing normally again. Lisa refused payment, saying the experience was compensation enough. "He's remarkable," she told me, "physiologically similar to great apes, but with unique adaptations. His lung capacity is extraordinary, probably why he survived pneumonia that would have killed a human. And Henry, he trusts you completely." The bond you two have is something I've never seen between human and animal." "He's not an animal," I corrected gently. "He's a person, different, but a person." Lisa nodded slowly. "Yes, I can see that now." She became part of our small circle of trust. 3 people in the world who knew about Samuel, and all 3 of us committed to protecting him. The 2010s brought more changes. I turned 60 in 2018, officially a senior citizen, though I felt older. My back was bad, my knees worse, and a minor 2015 heart attack had scared me badly. Samuel was in his 70s now, moving slowly, sleeping more, eating less. We were both aging, and I was increasingly aware our time together was finite. David visited more frequently, bringing his wife Emily into the secret in 2016 when they married. Emily, a biologist, was overwhelmed but adapted quickly. She helped Lisa monitor Samuel's health, documenting everything scientifically. "Uncle Henry, you've kept detailed records for over 30 years, Emily said, reading through my journals. "This is invaluable data about an unknown species. Even if Samuel is the last of his kind, this information could—" "No publication," I said firmly. "Not while he's alive, not while it could lead people here. After we're both gone, you can decide what to do with it, but not before." "I understand," she said. "But Henry, what if he's not the last? What if there are others out there who could benefit from what you've learned about his care, his needs?" It was a question I'd asked myself thousands of times. Were there others like Samuel, hiding in deep wilderness, struggling to survive? If so, could my knowledge help them? But the risk was too great. Revealing what I knew meant revealing Samuel's existence, and I'd promised him 40 years ago that I'd keep him safe. In 2019, Samuel's health started declining more noticeably. He was eating less, moving with difficulty, spending most of his time sleeping. Lisa examined him and confirmed what I'd feared. "He's dying, Henry, not immediately, but his systems are shutting down gradually. Old age. He might have a few more years, but he's in the final stage of life." I sat with Samuel that evening, my hand on his massive shoulder, both of us old and tired and facing the end. "You've had a good life," I told him. "Safe, comfortable, loved. That's more than many humans get. I hope you don't regret staying here with me all these years." Samuel placed his hand over mine, then pointed at me, at himself, at the heart symbol he'd drawn on cards decades ago. "No regrets. Family. Love." "Yeah," I said, tears in my eyes. "Me too, buddy. Me too." Samuel lived longer than Lisa predicted. Throughout 2020 and into 2021, while the world grappled with a COVID pandemic, Samuel and I faced our own quiet crisis of aging and mortality. The isolation everyone else suddenly experienced was nothing new to us. We'd been isolated together for 36 years by then. The pandemic actually helped us in one way. With people staying home and fewer visitors to the area, discovery risks diminished. David and Emily moved into the old house on one of my other properties, ostensibly to help me during lockdown, but really to provide daily assistance with Samuel's care. Samuel's world had contracted to just the barn now. He no longer had strength to navigate the tunnel to the outdoor enclosure. His arthritis was severe, and he spent most time on a specially constructed bed, essentially a large platform with thick padding that could support his weight while keeping him comfortable. But his mind remained sharp. He still enjoyed his music, still watched nature documentaries on the TV we'd mounted where he could see it easily. He still communicated with us through gestures and his picture cards, though his movements were slower, more deliberate. In June 2021, I turned 63. Samuel was probably around 78 or 79. We'd been together for 37 years, more than half my life and over half of his. "Do you remember when we met?" I asked him one evening, sitting beside his bed. You were trapped, dying, and I was just a guy who couldn't leave an injured creature to suffer. I never planned for any of this, never imagined we'd spend 4 decades together. Samuel made a soft sound and pointed at a card showing 2 figures side by side. Then he pointed at me, at himself, and placed his hand over his heart. Brothers, I said, understanding. Yeah, we became brothers, didn't we? He nodded slowly, his eyes, still intelligent despite his body's decline, filled with what I can only describe as love. In September 2021, Samuel stopped eating regularly. Lisa examined him and found nothing acutely wrong, just the general systems failure of extreme old age. She increased his pain medication and made him as comfortable as possible. It could be days or weeks, she told me privately. But Henry, you need to prepare yourself, and you need to think about what happens after. After? I hadn't let myself think that far ahead. His body. We can't just bury him in the forest like a pet. He's important, Henry. What he represents, what you've documented about him. The scientific community, the world should know he existed. I promised him secrecy. You promised him protection while he was alive. After he's gone, Lisa paused. That promise changes. I didn't want to think about it, but she was right. Samuel's death would raise questions I'd been avoiding for years. What would we do with his remains? How could we honor his life while respecting the secret we'd kept? David had a different perspective. Uncle Henry, you've hidden Samuel for almost 40 years. That's an incredible act of love and protection. But when he's gone, don't you think the world deserves to know that these creatures existed? That one of them trusted a human enough to spend his whole life with him? The government will come, I said. They'll take him, take my journals, classify everything. His memory will disappear into some vault. Not if we control the narrative, Emily suggested. What if we documented everything first? Photographs, videos, DNA samples. What if we went public immediately after he passes, so widely and publicly that the government can't suppress it? That's dangerous, Lisa warned. Henry could face legal consequences, harboring an endangered species without permits if they decide to classify it that way. He could lose everything. I'm 63 years old, I said. I've lived my life. If telling Samuel's story costs me my freedom or my property, maybe that's a price worth paying. He deserves to be remembered as more than a myth. We spent the fall of 2021 preparing. Emily took hundreds of photographs of Samuel, documenting his physical characteristics, his living space, his picture cards, everything. David recorded videos of Samuel communicating, responding to questions, showing his intelligence and personality. Lisa collected blood and hair samples for DNA analysis at a private lab she trusted. I organized my journals, 37 years of daily notes about Samuel's life, behavior, diet, health, emotions. It was the most complete documentation of a Bigfoot's existence ever compiled. Samuel seemed to understand what we were doing. He cooperated with the photographs and videos, even appeared to pose occasionally. On good days, he'd demonstrate his communication skills, pointing at picture cards to answer David's questions. Why do you think he's okay with this? David asked me. If he's lived in hiding all these years, why allow us to document everything now? Because he knows he's dying, I said. And maybe on some level he wants to be remembered, wants his kind to be known, even if he's the only one we've ever confirmed. On December 3, 2021, Samuel's condition deteriorated rapidly. We all gathered in the barn, me, David, Emily, and Lisa. Samuel was struggling to breathe, clearly in pain despite the medication. Is he suffering? I asked Lisa. Yes. His lungs are failing. It won't be much longer. I sat beside Samuel's bed, holding his massive hand in both of mine. "It's okay, buddy. You can let go. You've fought long enough. You've lived a good life, been loved, been safe. That's all anyone can ask for." Samuel's eyes focused on me. He squeezed my hand weakly, then did something he'd never done before. He vocalized words, or something close to words. His vocal anatomy couldn't produce human speech perfectly, but I could make out the sounds. "Henry, thank you." 37 years of communication through gestures and pictures, and in his final moments he found a way to say my name. "You're welcome," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for 40 years of companionship. I love you, Samuel." He made one last soft sound, squeezed my hand once more, and then his breathing stopped. The barn fell silent except for my sobs and Emily's quiet crying. Samuel was gone. We sat with him for hours, none of us ready to leave. Finally, as dawn broke on December 4th, 2021, we began the process we'd planned. Lisa performed a complete examination and collected tissue samples for preservation. Emily and David took final photographs and measurements. I wrote the final entry in my journal, December 4th, 2021. Samuel passed away peacefully at approximately 3:47 a.m. with his family present. He was approximately 78-79 years old and had lived with me for 37 years, 3 months and 20 days. The world has lost something irreplaceable. We preserved his body in a refrigerated storage unit we'd prepared, keeping it at a constant temperature while we made our next moves. According to our plan, we'd go public in stages. First, David and Emily published their documentation online. Photographs, videos, and scientific analysis through multiple channels simultaneously to prevent suppression. They sent packages to major news outlets, scientific journals, and cryptozoology organizations. Second, Lisa submitted her DNA analysis to a peer-reviewed genetics journal under her name, detailing the samples from an unidentified North American hominid without revealing the full story yet. Third, I prepared to give an interview to a major news network telling the complete story of Samuel's life and my 40 years protecting him. We launched everything on December 15th, 2021, exactly 11 days after Samuel's death. The response was instantaneous and overwhelming. Within hours, my property was surrounded by news vans, reporters, government vehicles, and curiosity seekers. My phone rang constantly until I unplugged it. The internet exploded with debate. Was this real? An elaborate hoax? The discovery of the century? Federal agents arrived on December 16th, demanding access to Samuel's remains and all documentation. I let them in, showing them everything. The senior agent, a woman named Sarah Thornton, examined Samuel's body for a long time before speaking. "Mr. Walsh, do you understand the legal complications of what you've done? Harboring an unknown species, preventing scientific study, withholding information from federal authorities?" "I understand I protected a living, intelligent being from being captured and experimented on," I interrupted. "I gave him a life of dignity and safety. If that's illegal, then charge me." Thornton looked at me for a long moment. "Mr. Walsh, there have been rumors of these creatures for decades, reports, sightings, alleged government knowledge. What you've done here is provide undeniable proof. This body, your documentation, the DNA evidence, it's all real, and it's going to change everything." "Good," I said. "It should. Samuel deserves to be known. His species deserves recognition, protection. If there are others out there, maybe now we can protect them instead of hiding them." "You may have just triggered the biggest cryptozoological and anthropological crisis in history," Thornton said. "I hope you're ready for the consequences. I've had 40 years to prepare, I replied. I'm ready. The months following our revelation were chaos. My property became a permanent camp for media, scientists, government officials, and protesters arguing about what should happen to Samuel's remains. I gave dozens of interviews showing my journals, the barn where he'd lived, the communication system we'd developed over 40 years. The DNA analysis confirmed what we'd documented. Samuel was indeed a previously unidentified hominid species, genetically positioned between modern humans and extinct archaic humans like Neanderthals. The scientific community was split between those amazed by the discovery and those skeptical it could have remained hidden so long. In January 2022, the federal government officially classified Samuel's species as critically endangered, possibly extinct, and established a task force to investigate whether other populations existed. They offered me immunity from prosecution in exchange for full cooperation and consultation on any conservation efforts. They want you to help them find more, David said as we read through the legal documents. After 40 years of hiding Samuel, they want you to help search for his kind. If there are others out there, I said, they deserve protection. Real protection, not just monitoring and secrecy. Samuel lived in hiding because he was terrified of humans. Maybe we can create a world where his kind don't have to live in fear. But the government had a different revelation for me. In February 2022, Agent Thornton returned with classified documents. Mr. Walsh, what I'm about to tell you has been kept secret for decades. The government has been aware of Bigfoot populations since the 1960s. We've been monitoring them, protecting their habitats covertly, and maintaining strict information control to prevent exactly the kind of chaos your revelation has caused. I stared at her. You've known all this time? While I was hiding Samuel, terrified you'd find him and take him away, you already knew these creatures existed? We knew they existed in the wild. We had no idea someone had one living on their property for 40 years. Mr. Walsh, the reason we suppressed information wasn't to deny their existence, but to protect them from hunters, trophy seekers, and overzealous scientists. Your revelation has put every remaining population at risk. Then protect them publicly, I said. Make their habitat legally protected. Enforce penalties for harming them. Stop pretending they don't exist and actually do something. It's not that simple. Yes, it is. You've been hiding the truth to make your jobs easier, not to protect these creatures. Samuel lived for 40 years in a barn because he was too terrified to be free. That's not protection. That's just a different kind of prison. The debate raged through 2022 and into 2023. Environmental groups pushed for official Endangered Species Act protection. Hunting organizations argued about whether Bigfoot should be legal game if it was just an animal. Ethicists debated whether a human-like species should have legal personhood. Samuel's body remained in federal custody, being studied by multiple research teams. They confirmed everything I'd documented: his intelligence, his physical adaptations, his capacity for emotion and communication. Some scientists proposed he be displayed in the Smithsonian, a monument to an unknown species. Others argued his remains should be returned to the wild, buried in the forest he'd been taken from 40 years earlier. I fought for the latter. Samuel lived his entire adult life in hiding to avoid being a spectacle. You will not make him one in death. In August 2023, a compromise was reached. Samuel's remains would be cremated and his ashes scattered in the Cascade Mountains near where I'd found him. A small portion of tissue samples would be preserved for future genetic research. My journals and documentation would be archived at the Smithsonian, available to researchers but not sensationalized for public display. The ceremony was held on September 1st, 2023, exactly 39 years and 18 days after I'd found Samuel trapped in that clearing. David, Emily, Lisa, and I, along with a small group of scientists and government officials who'd worked on the case, hiked to the location. I carried Samuel's ashes in a simple wooden box I'd made in my workshop, one last carpentry project for my old friend. When we reached the spot, I opened the box and scattered the ashes among the trees where he'd once lived free. Samuel was more than a scientific specimen, I said to the gathered witnesses. He was a person. He had preferences, emotions, memories. He loved classical music and nature documentaries. He had a sense of humor. He grieved. He laughed. He felt fear and joy and affection. For 40 years, he was my family, and I was his. He trusted me when he had no reason to trust any human. He stayed when he could have left. He gave me companionship and purpose, and in return, I gave him safety and dignity. That's what I want people to remember. Not just that Bigfoot is real, but that they're worthy of our respect, our protection, and our compassion. I scattered the last of the ashes. Rest easy, buddy. You're home now. The aftermath of Samuel's revelation continued to unfold through 2023 and into 2024. Several credible sightings were reported and investigated, though no other individuals were captured or confirmed. Habitat protection laws were passed in several states, creating large wilderness preserves where the creatures might exist undisturbed. In March 2024, I turned 66. Samuel had been gone for 2 years and 3 months. The barn where he'd lived still stood, but it was empty now. I'd removed everything: the bed we'd built, the TV and DVD player, the picture cards we'd used to communicate. All of it was archived, documented, preserved as evidence of a 40-year experiment in interspecies friendship. I gave my final major interview in April 2024, sitting on the porch of my house, looking out at the forest that had been Samuel's prison and sanctuary. "Do you regret it?" the reporter asked. 40 years of your life devoted to hiding and protecting Samuel. You never married, never had children, never lived a normal life. Do you regret that choice? I thought about it for a long moment. I regret that he needed to be hidden at all. I regret that the world wasn't safe for him to live freely. I regret that he spent his entire adult life in a barn instead of in these forests where he belonged. But do I regret knowing him, protecting him, loving him? Never. Not for a second. What do you hope Samuel's legacy will be? I hope people understand that there's more to this world than we think we know, that there are mysteries still hiding in the wild places, and they deserve our protection, not our exploitation. And I hope that if there are others like Samuel out there, they're treated with the respect and dignity he deserved but only found with me. What would you say to Samuel if you could speak to him one more time? I looked out at the forest, at the mountains beyond, at the sky where I like to imagine Samuel might be, finally free. I'd say thank you. Thank you for trusting me. Thank you for 40 years of companionship. Thank you for teaching me that intelligence and emotion aren't unique to humans. That family can take forms we never expect. And that sometimes the most important thing we can do is protect someone who can't protect themselves. And I'd tell him I'm sorry. Sorry it took me so long to tell his story. Sorry the world wasn't ready for him. Sorry he had to live his life in hiding. But mostly, I'd tell him what I told him every night for 40 years. That he was loved, that he mattered, and that his life had meaning beyond what anyone else would understand. The reporter turned off her recorder. That's beautiful, Mr. Walsh. Thank you. After she left, I sat on that porch until sunset, just like I used to do before I'd go out to the barn to spend the evening with Samuel. The routine was so ingrained that I still felt the pull, Still had the urge to walk out there and check on him. But the barn was empty. Samuel was gone. The secret was revealed. And I was just an old man living alone in the woods, with nothing left but memories and the knowledge that I'd done something extraordinary, even if the world hadn't known it for 40 years. David and Emily visit regularly. Lisa stops by to check on me. They worry I'm lonely, that I'm lost without Samuel. Maybe I am. 40 years is a long time to dedicate to one purpose, one friendship. What do you do when that's gone? But I have the journals, I have the photographs, I have 40 years of memories of a friendship that shouldn't have been possible but was. And I have the satisfaction of knowing that Samuel's story is out there now, that his existence mattered, that he'll be remembered not as a myth, but as a real, thinking, feeling person who deserved better than what the world would have given him. In my bedroom I keep one thing, Samuel's favorite picture card. It shows 2 stick figures side by side with a heart between them. Family, love, brotherhood, that's what we were. That's what we'll always be, even though he's gone. I'm 66 years old. I hid a living Bigfoot from the government for 40 years, and I'd do it all again in a heartbeat. Because some friendships are worth any sacrifice. Some secrets are kept not out of shame, but out of love. And sometimes the most remarkable thing an ordinary person can do is recognize that something extraordinary deserves protection, dignity, and respect. That was Samuel's gift to me, the privilege of protecting him, of knowing him, of being his friend.